at the stage. I just have to wait till it feeds through. There you go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm at First Baptist Church in Okanagon, Washington. Pam and I are on our 50th anniversary road trip, which means we're sitting in a car today. We'll pass 6,000 miles when we leave here, and we're about 3,000 miles from home. So it's going to be about a 9,000 mile trip. We were married 50 years ago. We've been stopping, seeing friends, family, others. I spoke a couple times in Southern California. I guess Bakersfield is Southern California, unless you live in Bakersfield, but it's central. But we had a great trip. We've had a couple little incidents. We driving through West Texas, speed limit 80, and got up close to some birds eating a carcass, and one of these giant vulture, with those 6-foot wingspans, took off and flew straight into the windshield. It ripped off my little windshield wiper fluid nozzle and also tore the windshield wiper, which was okay because it didn't rain until we got to Southern California, where it never supposed to rain. So I got that fixed. Whatever. It's kind of a funny story. I went to Safe Flight. When we left Arizona on Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday, we only drove 2 miles on Interstate 10, caught a rock, put a chip in the windshield. It looked like it would hold till we got to California, went to Safe Flight, got all the insurance set and everything, get an appointment the next morning, go in and they fixed it. They did a fantastic job. So I'll give credit to State Farm and Safe Flight for working together on getting that done. And I called Pam, I left, started to get on the freeway, got on the freeway, the 15 freeway there on Rancho Cucamonga. So I'm going to go get breakfast. Drove less than 2 miles, caught another rock. And this one put a big thing across. So they had to get it in for the next morning. Went back the next afternoon. I said, I've been at Safe Flight so many times over the past few days. I'm afraid if I look at the bulletin board, I'm going to be on the list to bring in the donuts for work next week. Because I was like a regular. So got to meet a lot of people. Everything worked out great. Saw a lot of great scenery. And saw it in, particularly in Seattle and parts of Oregon. We have some really serious problems in our world and our culture that are pretty bad. So I'm going to move over here to. Do you see anything on the screen? Okay. So I'm going to do a shorter prophecy update than I usually do. Those that are listening on YouTube. I'm also going to be teaching second hour. I may just record that one. So I'm going to do just some of the important things that have been happening over the past couple of weeks. That what I do is I look at current events in the light of Bible prophecy. So there are a lot of Bible prophecies that are in the Bible. And the one thing you need to keep in mind about Bible prophecy like that is those Bible prophecies will unfold in a real world. So when it talks about, for example, when Jesus gives the prophecy in Matthew chapter 24, he says, I think this is kind of central and core to those of us in the church who are futurists. We believe that there's things going to happen in the future that have been written about in the scriptures. We believe there's a future for a nation of Israel. And so those of us who are futurists, the core central prophecy is Matthew chapter 24. Jesus takes some time there and he warns us. First of all, he says, take heed that no one deceive you. So what should we take from that if we're living in the end of time is that there will be people out there trying to deceive us. And do you think there are people, and I'm talking about in the church. And by the way, when Jesus warns about deception, he also mentions wars, rumors of wars, signs in the sun, moon, stars, heavens, all of that. 4 times, though, he warns about deception. So if Jesus warns 4 times about something, then it would be a pretty good idea that you ought to take that particular prophecy seriously. And so in that passage in Matthew chapter 24, and sometimes what you need to do is you look at a passage, but you need to deep dive a little bit. You need to drill down on what's there. So he says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. So there's a lot of things there to unpack. Daniel wrote about the abomination of desolation in a number of passages. So when Jesus references it, you can be rest assured that that's a very important prophetic passage. And so you should go back to Daniel and look at it. The other thing you could get from what Jesus said is, and this has been a big controversy in the church as people criticize, it's called textual criticism. For example, one of the things they say is Daniel didn't write the book of Daniel. So as a trial lawyer, my first witness would be the statement of Jesus that Daniel wrote the book of Daniel. He would have known. And when you see that, he says, stand in the holy place. And then we can argue about, is that a rebuilt temple? Is it an altar? But it's going to be on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. By the way, there is a theory going around evangelical circles by people, they're very nice people, I've met a lot of them, that the temple was, the pictures of the Temple Mount with the Dome of the Rock and that sort of thing, that was not really where everything occurred. I'm trying to see if I have a picture of that. So I don't see one. But that the Temple Mount was in the city of David. So if you look at the existing picture of Jerusalem, you'll see the wall of Jerusalem. You'll see the Temple Mount, the wall. So let's say you stand on the Mount of Olives. When you stand on the Mount of Olives, you're east of the Temple Mount, and then you're looking across the Kidron Valley and you see Al-Aqsa Mosque at the southern end to the left. That's a Muslim, very important Muslim place of worship. In the center, you see the Gold Dome. Everybody's seen the Gold Dome. By the way, that Gold Dome didn't exist as a Gold Dome 60 years ago. That was added by King Hussein of Jordan. And it's not really a mosque, it's a commemorative building. But you see that picture everywhere in Muslim literature. That's sort of central and core to Muslims. And you think, well, it must have been important to the Muslims for centuries. It's only been, I could say in my lifetime, that it became the theory that that's where Muhammad ascended to heaven in his night journey. It's a total bogus, made-up claim. It only became a claim when the Jews took control of Jerusalem. That's when that Muslim belief came into practice. It's a total made-up thing. So you see the Temple Mount. Some people say it goes down dramatically to the southern end of the Temple Mount. It goes down over the city of David. They were digging, by the way, a number of years ago, probably back in it's been not that long ago. There was a sewer pipe broke. It was an Arab neighborhood built over the city of David. When in Israel and the Middle East, they build a place that's good for them. It has a water source and that type of thing. And then when the city falls into disrepair, they just kind of flatten it down and build again, build again, build again. So if you go to Israel today and you go down to the city of David, you will find that underneath that village that's there, they have excavated underneath. They've got steel beams and girders and everything. So the theory of some people in the evangelical church today is that the temple was built there. I can tell you pretty much without any reservation that it was not built there. If the temple was built there, temple was a very big building. It was built on a platform, very big platform. You see the platform today. But if that platform was over the city of David, what would you have in the city of David to prove that the temple was there? you'd have piles and piles and tons of rock and debris. You don't have that. I asked one of the archaeologists down there once. I said, was the temple built here?" And he looked at me like, "Are you the dumbest person I've ever met?" Because there's no evidence of it there. So anyway, so Jesus talks about the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place. So what does that mean? That means that at some point in the future, somebody's going to make that a holy place dedicated to the Lord. It's going to be based on the Old Testament. And then that temple, that worship area is going to be desecrated by the person we know as the Antichrist. And so what you would expect is, if you live in the end time, unpack that phrase a little bit, stand in the holy place, what you will find is that there has to be some kind of holy place. There has to be a temple or an altar. So what's going on in Israel right now with all of these things? And the answer, this one, sorry about that. There we go. It's on March 23rd. I recycle these things, by the way. So there's a big, have you heard of the red heifers? Anybody hear of the red heifers? Okay. So there were 5 red heifers that were brought from Rockwall, Texas. In fact, 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago, I did a conference in Rockwall, Texas. And when I got there, they said this is where the red heifers came from, that they're going to take to Israel, they're going to sacrifice one of them. If it meets after 2 years, it meets the purity standards. No more than 2 white hairs on the whole heifer. And my question too, by the way, was, where's the red heifer barbecue? Or how do you like your red heifer? Because then we'll eat the sacrifice after they're done. But anyway, so they sent those to Israel. My understanding is there's some stories floating around that none of them are qualified any longer to be the red heifer that has just less than 2 white hairs or fewer. There's other people saying, well, because it's such a controversial issue in the Middle East, in Jerusalem, that they're not telling you that they still have 1 or 2 that are probably qualified. And so the answer is, the definitive answer about that is, I don't know. I don't know if those red heifers are still qualified. You can go up to Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood for almost 400 years, and you can see them today. You can go and look at the red heifers that they have. So what they will do, though, is they need to, because the temple area has been unpure, they need to purify it with the ashes of the red heifer. They will burn the red heifer. They will take the ashes and they'll sprinkle just a minute amount in water and then cleanse that whole area. They'll cleanse the temple instruments. They'll cleanse the people, the priests that are going to go up there and serve in the temple. And they have all of the implements. I've seen them, I've touched them. If you go into the Jewish quarter of the old city of Jerusalem, you will see a giant golden menorah that sits there. It looks very much like the golden menorah on the top of my Israel chess piece there that I made up. That's actually a replica of it. And so all of these things are happening. So when you read the passage of Jesus, when you see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, there's a lot to unpack there. Because you have to go back and you look at scripture. The best way to interpret scripture is use other scripture to interpret it or fill out the details. A few verses later, he says, then when you see this, it says, then flee Jerusalem. That's about verse 22. And he does that. He says, flee and pray that your flight not be on Shabbat. Now, why would that make any difference? Well, on Shabbat, you're only allowed to walk so far. So if you're trying to flee Jerusalem and get out of the environs of Jerusalem, Shabbat, if you're a religious Jew, would be a problem. And so what does this tell us? It tells us that there will be religious Jews living in Jerusalem when this event takes place. And we know that it'll be Jewish because it's the holy place, not a Muslim abomination. There will be something there. And the answer is, I don't know how that takes place. There are a lot of different theories. So this is a poster. What you need to do when you watch the Middle East is very, very important. The cultural, political things, they're very important as well. But you need to watch the posters and things that they say. So, for example, last October, there were about 500 ballistic missiles launched by Iran into Israel. Within days, 2 days, this giant poster was put up on a square in Tehran, Iran. They were launched from Iran, 500 ballistic missiles, the biggest ballistic missile launch by one country on one day against another country in human history. Very, very significant. And so what do you see in that poster? Well, you see in the center of the poster, you see that golden dome. That's the Temple Mount. And then around it, you see all of these rockets coming in. And I watched this. People were streaming it live. Friends of mine, they were sending me video when it happened because they knew it was coming. And so everybody was watching. The sirens went off. The warnings went off. And when the warnings go off in Israel, you see something like this. For example, these are the warnings. This is an app that I use called Zofar, like shofar, the trumpet. So this happened yesterday. They get these warnings. They all carry these. It's on their phone. They get an alert, and when they hear the alert, what do? Run to a shelter because they don't know where these missiles are coming in from. The Houthis way down on the over 1,000 miles away. They're coming in. They don't know where they're going to land. And I'll show you in a minute what happened. So they run to the shelter. A couple of years ago, I was in Israel. We went down to the Gaza border. The same kibbutzim, that's the plural of kibbutz, the kibbutzim that were attacked on October 7th, 2023. I was there about 9 or 10 months before that happened. And now, by the way, you will notice I kind of go down rabbit trails, so try to keep up. Eventually, we'll circle back. Might be a few weeks, but eventually I get back to my point. We went to the kibbutzim, and we sat and we met with the people there. And the one lady that we met, I've seen her interviewed on Fox News and everything since October 7th. She survived the attack. She said, I love living, this is a kibbutz named Nira. It's probably the closest kibbutz to the border fence of all the kibbutzim along the Gaza border. So they walked us around the perimeter fence, and less than a kilometer away, you saw the Gaza border fence. But they've had situations in that kibbutz in Nira where they tunneled under that border fence. This is years and years ago. They tunneled under the border fence. It's a farm field. The guy was driving a tractor. It went down in a hole. They go down to check, well, why'd that go down in a hole? They looked, it was a tunnel that they had built because they were going to come and attack the kibbutz. Exactly what they did on October 7th. So the warning signs were there. And by the way, the kibbutzim people, so understand, I love everybody, right? But I'm a conservative. That should be pretty obvious after listening to me for a while. But these are liberal left-wing hippies that live in the kibbutz, the kibbutzim. They're very nice people. They make great meals. We had meals there, a couple of them that day. We talked to them. We sat and talked. And she said, living in Nira is 97% heaven and 3% hell. It's beautiful. It's pastoral. It's a communal lifestyle. They're lefties. They're peaceniks. They like that, okay? That's fine. But the 3% hell is when a rocket was launched from Gaza, they had 10 seconds to get to the shelter, max. And if they didn't, in fact, there's a memorial stone there in the kibbutz, and you walk by and it shows this is where a rocket hit 3 guys. 2 dead, one lost his legs. We met him later that night. He's the mayor of one of the regional councils down there in the south of Israel. And so that's what she says. It's 3% hell because you don't know, is it going to hit my house or what? Talked to other friends that live in a front between Hebron and Jerusalem. And they said, oh, well, we have 35 seconds, or we have a minute and 10 seconds. I can't remember the exact number. Oh, so that's nothing. We got a minute and 10 seconds to get to safety. 10 seconds, that's kind of puts you a little bit on edge. The kibbutz up the road, they had 15 seconds. But you can imagine, so this is what happened last night. Missiles coming in from the Houthis, and they don't know where it's going to land because it's very complicated to project the trajectories and everything. So they sounded the red alerts, and everybody in that whole area, a couple million people, headed to their shelters. Every house built after 1992 or so has a safe room. And by the way, what happened on October 7th, if I can digress there for just a moment, what Hamas did was pure. I mean, you can just look at it from a basic standpoint. It was pure evil what they did, attacking those kibbutzim. Places where a lot of them worked. They were working there, and the people that lived there were peace-loving. We want to make peace with our Palestinian Arab neighbors. So they had them work. There were 18,000 coming into Israel to work on a day, but they were taking photographs, gathering data as to how the kibbutzim were organized, who was in charge, if they had weapons to protect them. They're usually kept in a central location. They knew where those were. They knew which doors were locked and unlocked, and they shared that with Hamas. And Hamas, they just didn't attack there because it's easy. If you went through all of Israeli society, the ones who wanted peace with the Palestinian Arabs the most lived in those kibbutzim along the Gaza border. So what they did, and my friend at the Jerusalem Post wrote about this morning on his Twitter feed, Seth Frantzman, and he said, they attacked the people who believed in peace the most. They didn't attack. They slaughtered, raped, murdered, mutilated the people who believed in peace the most. So Israel is in the midst of a shift in its politics. It's moving to the right. Now, right wing in Israel is not necessarily right wing like right wing here in the United States, but they do bear some characteristics. And there's a growth of religious Zionism in Israel. And those people, they're growing. They're growing for two reasons. One, on the ultra-Orthodox side and the religious Zionist type. The ultra-Orthodox are the ones that they don't serve in the army, they live on welfare, they just read the Torah and make babies. That's what they do. They've convinced their wives. So I don't know how to say this in the kind of way that, hey, listen, you may bear the Messiah, the Moshiach, as we know is coming. They're looking for the Messiah. So they have babies. I mean, Pam, you remember when we drove in there in 2017, we drove through an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, and in less than a kilometer, we saw 100 baby carriages on the street. The street we drove down, not the side streets. And when you went out at night, if you saw ultra-Orthodox Jewish couples, everyone had a baby, every single one. And I remember some guy walking through the old city of Jerusalem. He's got 2 kids in a stroller. He's got like a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old hanging on his leg, and another one trailing behind. He's talking on his wife on the cell phone, trying to get up the kind of uneven terrain. So he had like 6 kids with him, and they were all under the age of 6. And that's very, very typical. So the demographics is changing, and that's making the country more religious And so that's why you see all these protests in Israel right now. There's a lot of political turmoil. If you think we have bad political turmoil, actually, if you could take a mere, it would be hard for you to understand what they're going through in Israel, or you could understand what they're going through in Israel if you just watch our political situation here with the lawfare against President Trump and conservatives and censorship and all that. That's going on in Israel. They have a Supreme Court in Israel that's totally out of control. Ours is kind of out of control. I say that as a 45-year lawyer. So when Jesus, back to Matthew chapter 24, circling back now, when he says flee, pray that it's not on Shabbat, what can you learn from that particular prophecy? What you can learn from that prophecy is that there will be a Jerusalem, it's going to be occupied by Jews, and they're going to have laws about traveling on Shabbat. And I will tell you, go to Jerusalem today and try to get a cab on Saturday. You cannot do it. So what Jesus said was there's going to be a Jerusalem in the future where there's going to be this temple, holy place rebuilt on the Temple Mount of some fashion. And it's going to be a Jerusalem controlled by Jews. That was not true for almost 2,000 years. It is true today. And now we have this conflict. So last night, they've done a great job. When Iran launched these missiles like last October, a few landed. There was one person killed. He happened to be a Palestinian Arab guy who got their air defense missiles went up and hit the rocket, and it fell out of the sky and fell on him and killed him. And I've seen the video. That's the only one who was killed was an Arab guy. So they've been done very well. But last night, this is what happened. This is my friend Brian Schwager, who lives in the Jerusalem area, and he compiled this. You're going to see a video here is Ben Gurion Airport, and you're going to see here comes a missile, and you see the missile explode. This is a very, very big deal. It's a very, very big deal that missile exploded like that near Ben Gurion Airport. Because what are the Houthis? These people who live almost like the Stone Age, they starve to death so they can have missiles and launch them at their enemies. They're totally committed to jihad. And this one got through. But what's going to happen? The goal is a couple missiles like this, and nobody will go to Israel for tourism, and that's one of their main sources of income. Now, I have a tour planned in October. If you want to go to fbchapel.com and click, there should be something on the homepage to get to details about the tour. Now, we're still planning on going, but this is a very, very big deal that people are dealing with. This just happened. And so understand that in this Middle East that we have today, that Israel is facing 8 or 9 fronts of enemies attacking them. Of course, you have Gaza with Hamas. You had Hezbollah in Lebanon. You had Hezbollah in Syria, in the Syrian government. You had Iraq, which launches missiles every so often. You had Iran, of course. You had the Houthis. You had Yemen. And then you have the internal problem in the heartland of Israel. This red area, this is a pretty good three-dimensional depiction of the elevation changes in Israel. That tall peak in the upper left-hand corner is Mount Hermon, about 9,300 feet above sea level. Similar to some of the elevations that you have over in the Cascades, close to here. And then it comes down, of course, up there you see the Sea of Galilee, that lake in the north. That's about 580 feet below sea level. So when you're coming up to, you're like 60 stories above on a road, 60 stories above the Sea of Galilee. And you look down, and the sign on the road says you're now at sea level. And so it's way below sea level. And of course, the Dead Sea is plot, the lowest spot on planet Earth. It's about 1,300 feet below sea level. And so the water rolls down down the Jordan Valley from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. That red area, though, and this is one of the things we hope to do on our tour this fall, is to visit things in the red area. That's the biblical heartline. Most tours circle that. They don't go into those areas. So, and I just, for a long time, I thought this is not good. Now people are really trying to open it up. But right now, in that area, that's one of the fronts that Israel faces, is that red area. The northern part of that would be called Samaria, biblical Samaria. Would also correspond to the 12 tribes, or the northern kingdom of Israel, after the kingdom split after Solomon died. And then the southern part is called Judea, and that would correspond to where the kingdom of Judah was after the tribes split, the kingdom split after Solomon's death. That's the biblical heartland. It's shocking. I'll talk a little bit more in the next hour about some of those sites in there and why they're important and why they're prophetic and why seems to be all coming together right now. It is an amazing thing. There's so much going on in the Middle East that it's not possible for me. We could go till 4 a.m. Easily. I would probably be sitting down in a few hours, but it's very, very difficult. For those of us who watch this, who believe we've been called as watchmen by the Lord to talk about these things, it's increasingly difficult to pull all of this together. So I mentioned the Temple Mount, the sacrifices. They're planning to build the temple. They're working on it. And there is, in fact, this year, more Jews have gone up and visited the Temple Mount than any time in the last 2,000 years in terms of numbers. It's a pretty amazing thing. They didn't used to be allowed to go up there. If you go up there today to the Dome of the Rock, you can't go in. If you're a American like us, you can't go in the Dome of the Rock. It's restricted to Muslims. Now, we went in there 30 years ago, almost exactly 30 years ago when we were there. We were allowed to go inside there and into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You cannot do that. But they're trying to take over that whole area. This is very prophetic, this conflict and tension over this. If you think of, they say if the apple of God's eye is Israel, then the pupil is Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, because it's that important. Because God says that it's important. So we talked about the fronts. We talked about the 5 or 6. I think we're up to 7 now. The internal ones in Judea and Samaria, also called the West Bank. This is what everybody has proposed. We're going to give them a state in the West Bank. It would be everything inside the red there is referred to as the Auschwitz lines. It would result, if they give them that for a state, Jews are going to be slaughtered by the millions. And that's the goal. You need to understand that this is the goal. And the other war that I think is the war of anti-Semitism that's growing. Have you noticed that growing everywhere? And even people that we liked on the right wing in media and that type of thing, like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, have completely gone off the rails and are Jew-hating anti-Semites. I don't care what Tucker Carlson says. He can scrunch up his face. He can act like he's being attacked. He brings on person after person after person to attack Israel and the Jews. That's by design. And I have some pretty good inside information that this was well known for a very long time at Fox. You just weren't allowed to talk about it because he was the big media star, right? Brought him in a lot of money. And so this is what's happening. So the media front is a very big deal. It is a constant thing. I did an interview with a guy named Dumasani Washington, who used to be with Christians United for Israel. He has his own organization now. He wrote an article about Tucker Carlson in Tablet Magazine 1 year and 1 month ago. Tucker interviewed a guy named Gunther Isaac. He's with an organization called Christ at the Checkpoint. He is a Marxist, leftist, liberation theologian, just like his buddy, the Pope. And when the Pope went to Israel in 2014, he did a mass in Manger Square, and baby Jesus was wrapped in one of those Palestinian keffiyeh scarves that they wear. Mother Isaac, last year, Christmas, he put up a thing, Jesus in the rubble. And the Pope then picked that up and did it in the Vatican in Rome. Baby Jesus wrapped in a Palestinian keffiyeh with, rubble around him. Tucker Carlson interviewed him like he was a great Christian theologian. He was not. He is a complete apostate, Marxist, leftist liberation theologian. You should only listen to him to find out what you shouldn't believe. He says Jesus was a Palestinian refugee. It's total. There was no Palestine at the time of Jesus. It was governed by Rome. And by the way, the Palestinian people were made up by the Russians, the KGB, in about 1964 to cause conflict in the Middle East. And by the way, how's that going? It actually got a lot of mileage, haven't it? And it continues to this day. So, Israel. I'll just do a few more things, and then I'll take a couple questions if you have them. So back to this poster. Here's what the poster really says in Tehran. And you see the Temple Mount. And so a lot of Orthodox Jews and Jews pray, okay, we got to get rid of the Stone of the Rock somehow. Maybe one of your own maybe the Iranian or Houthi missiles will hit it and take us out. When Saddam Hussein was launching missiles in there back in the 90s, when they knew they were coming in, a lot of Orthodox Jews would run to the Western Wall and pray that one would hit that thing on the top and save them the trouble. We'll take the debris away. This is what it says. If you want, Hezbollah is alive. This is back in October. The beeper attacks where they killed a bunch of Hezbollah operatives and maimed them and blinded them. They took out Nasrallah. They took out head of Hamas. Hezbollah is alive. If you want war, we are masters of war. And then you will hear the Iranians say, well, we don't want to wipe them out. We just want to, we don't want them to live there. They can go live someplace else. It says here, Israel must be wiped off the face of the earth, and this is the beginning of the story. I'm saying, listen to what they say. Listen to what the jihadis say. Listen to what the jihadis in neighborhoods in the Dallas, Texas area and other places around the country where the subdivisions have names of Islamic conquerors for street names. Friends, we have a massive problem. You need to be situationally aware. Now, I don't know what the situation here is locally in North Central Washington, but as we've gone across the country, it's changed just from our observation. And Texas is in a lot of trouble. Right now, you're seeing there's a massive war brewing between two nuclear powers, between Pakistan and Iran. I'm sorry, Pakistan and India. Those are pretty big populous countries. They have nuclear weapons. I've been doing some research on this over the years, and so I've known this for about 10 years, and now some people are talking about it. What is the biggest genocide, or what was the biggest genocide in human history? we think, well, Hitler killing the Jews in World War II, Mao killing his 100 million of his people in the revolution, the communists killing millions, starving millions in Ukraine, 4 or 5 million people in the breadbasket country, by the way, Ukraine, very rich soil. I've seen articles, whether you agree, I don't care what your position on the war is or not. These articles are accurate. They said Ukraine, properly managed, could feed the entire world. That's amazing, but it's not. And in the midst, in that country, Stalin starved 4 or 5 million. Not the biggest genocide in history. Back in the medieval times, 12, 13, 1400, the Muslims invaded India. Now there's a little bit of controversy about how many were killed in that. I think that the higher numbers are correct. The Muslims killed between 400 and 800 million people as they conquered India. Do you know, to this day, the single country on the planet that has the largest population of Muslims is India. Indonesia is an independent country. They're the biggest Muslim country, but the country that has the most Muslims is India. And so when you see this war brewing right there, we do not understand the problem that we're facing. And I'm concerned, even, I'm concerned with people in the Trump administration that do not have a clue about what is being planned. Let me finish with one more thing. Let me see if I've talked about this a lot and I've droned on way too far. So there was a Bible prophecy teacher, actually. He used to be headquartered for many years over in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Chuck Missler, good friend of mine, he told me many years ago, he said, do you get excited when you see, this is probably 16, 17 years ago, sitting at dinner with him. I said, Chuck, do you get excited about all this stuff? He goes, yeah, I do. But what I'm watching, John, and what you should watch is Turkey. So ever since that time, I have watched Turkey all the time. Now, this Erdogan guy is kind of interesting. He just turned 71 in February. He's 2 days younger than I am. So he is very much, you see here, this is a parliamentarians in support of Israel. They had a big meeting in Istanbul. He heads up the Islamic conferences. So I'm going to make reference to one thing. And then I have a short video I'm going to show you. In December, I saw a poster. That's why you need to look at what these people said. These posters, these rallies and what the people say at these protests at Columbia and Harvard and everywhere, they want to kill the Jews. Believe them. That's what they want to do. Give them the courtesy of believing that they're genocidal maniacs. I mean, and if you can elect a president that will take their funding away. Anyway, so Erdogan's son organizes a rally at the Galata Bridge in Istanbul. Istanbul sits on the Bosporus, and it's very strategic because between the Bosporus and the Dardanelles, Russia's warm water ports are all bottled up by Turkey if they want it to be. That's why there's always tension between Turkey and Russia. And Turkey's very bad that Russia took over Crimea back in 2014, because Turkey considers that on the Black Sea to be part of its thing. So what Erdogan wants to do is he will state that he wants to reconstitute the Ottoman Empire that ruled the Middle East and those areas over there along the Mediterranean, North Africa, for 400 years. So the wall you see around Jerusalem, that was built by an Ottoman Turk, the one you see there today. So they have this march, and in the march, It says the sun is rising, and you see half Palestinian flag, half Turkish flag. He's he's saying there, we're going to use the Palestinian issue to rise to prominence and power in the Muslim world. And he doesn't want a Turkish empire. He wants a Muslim jihadi empire that will control the lives of everybody under its control. He is a jihadist in a suit. Now, I don't care if Trump thinks he's a good guy. He's not a good guy. Somebody needs to go to President Trump and say, he's not a good guy. He's not your friend. Watch him like a hawk and get somebody in your administration that will watch him like a hawk. And then the poster had 3 buildings underneath. On the left, they had a big picture of Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia is a large church built in Istanbul. It was the largest church ever built in the history of Christianity. Now, we can argue about whether the Orthodox are correct in what they believe and that sort of thing. That's a whole different topic. But it was, from a Muslim perspective, the largest, most significant church building on planet Earth. 5 years ago, Erdogan went in and turned that into a mosque. This is what they do. That is a statement. For example, when you go to Jerusalem, you will see an unfinished building if you drive the road, the Patriarch's Highway, Route 60, north out of Jerusalem, up towards Ramallah, which is the Palestinian capital. There's a big building up there on probably the highest point around Jerusalem. It was a palace that was being built by King Hussein of Jordan, and then the 1967 war happened, and it stopped. Why did he choose that place? Well, the place is called Gibeah, so get your Bibles out today and go look up Gibeah. Who came from Gibeah? Saul of the tribe of Benjamin. Gibeah, and they've excavated, this is the biblical homeland of the tribe of Benjamin, from which the first king of Israel, Saul, came. So what King Hussein of Jordan was saying by building this palace here was, listen, you think that was your first king? I'm so significant. I'm a Muslim. I'm building my palace on top of your first king's home. That's why the real estate becomes very important. So the picture of the poster for this rally on January 1st in Istanbul was, first, Hagia Sophia. First, Christians. We're going to take them. Yes, it was not first. Yesterday, Hagia Sophia. 5 years ago, turned it into a mosque. Mission accomplished. In the center was a tower, and that tower is a minaret tower at the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. So remember, this is in December. What happened in December? Jihadis took over Syria. 8 days. They took over Damascus, where there were 40,000 Syrian army people with 800 people. That comes from Vladimir Putin at his year-end news conference. 800 beat 400 or 40,000. The Umayyad Mosque was from the Persian Umayyad dynasty that governed all the way into Spain, across North Africa. And so that's the Shia. So what he's saying in the poster is, yesterday, the Christians, today, Damascus, today, the Shia Islam. And then on the right is a picture of the Dome of the Rock. Tomorrow, Al-Aqsa. That is the plan. We got the Christians, we got the Shia, now we're going to get the Jews in Jerusalem. And everything Erdogan says is about that. When Trump announced he was moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem back in December of 2017, one thing happened. Erdogan called all of the Organization of Islamic Countries to come to Istanbul to meet about this problem. 57 countries, by the way. You might remember a former president said, well, I've been to all 57 states. Well, there are 57 states in the Organization of Islamic Countries. I'm just throwing that out there. You can draw your own conclusions from that. But he had a giant meeting and he said, and he had maps that he put in his newspapers during that time. We're going to attack, all of the Muslim countries should attack Israel. Well, is this not what the Bible says is going to happen in the end times? All of these countries are going to come against Israel. Jerusalem will be a cup of trembling. I'm telling you that the Bible's really coming alive. And I'm suggesting to you that you've not seen anything yet if you pay attention. It's getting big. So the Temple Mount is very important. I'll close with this video. This was put up by an Orthodox Jewish group. Adonai Israel is what he's singing, chanting. It's kind of very interesting video because you saw, you saw at the beginning, right? You saw that it was the Dome of the Rock there, and then it explodes, and then the temple replaces it. This is their goal, whether you want it to be that way or not. That's what they're doing, and this is coming to a fruition. So there is a lot of things happening. I mean, it's just it's incredible. So, any quick questions?
And you mentioned the universities around our country here. We have a lot of young people that are influenced and they're shouting out the whole from the river to the sea. I mean, you and I understand what that means. Can you explain that and go into it? A lot of these protesters or rioters, whatever you want to call them, don't really understand what that means. They're actually calling for.
Well, when they say from the river to the sea, first of all, if you see a young person doing that, ask them, what river and what sea are you talking about? I would guess that 90% don't have a clue. But it really means, and by the way, if you look at that Palestinian keffiyeh, the scarf that they wear, those squares, those are actually like fishing nets. It sort of embeds in the concept of from the river to the sea, and there's like a river on there in the embroidery around that scarf. So the river to the sea means they want to go from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. They want all that land. Well, that's Israel. And it's to wipe out Israel. That's what they're calling for. It's not when they say they want to wipe you out, like when this poster is put up in Tehran, we're the masters of war. If you want war, we need to wipe out Israel. Believe what they say. They say it all the time. They do it. I cannot remember the guy's name. He's done a lot of work on the history of Islam, particularly in the Mediterranean, in Europe, and Africa regions. You can find his YouTube channel. Everybody talks about, oh, the Crusades were so bad. It was awful. They came to attack us. Folks, he goes through all of the battles of this period of Islam. The Crusades were like 12 or 13 battles. The Islamic attacks and battles that they instituted were in the hundreds. If you don't know history, you're going to doomed to repeat it. And we're living a very significant time. And so, look, the leading institutions in our country are calling for this. That ought to call into question the leading institutions in our country. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
are the ones that fund a lot of these.
Actually,
Like, it's kind of
actually, the one that funds the most is a country called Qatar. It's on the Persian Gulf. There's a big U.S. military base there. Without that military base, Qatar would cease to be a country within a short period of time. So on my little, I sort of play around with, of course, I have my canary there, the canary in the coal mine. And then this one right here, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the left, I make up these chess pieces. So that's Qatar. That's one of their most famous skyscrapers in Doha. And then since they're big oil and gas, I put a gas platform on top. That's the way mine works. So I'm trying to convey a lot of things about Qatar. They have a lot of money. Each Qatari probably gets at least $2 million a year from the gas and oil wealth that they have. They're incredibly wealthy. There's only about 300,000 of them, but they have contributed billions, with a B, billions of dollars to American universities. And so you will see a guy like Tucker Carlson who will get on and talk about how wonderful the Qataris are. They're such wonderful people. Hey, Tucker, show me your checkbook. Because I think there's a connection. I mean, because he interviewed, if he interviewed me, it would be, we will never do that, but if he interviewed somebody like me, it would be very contentious. Because I support Israel. He interviews this Qatari foreign minister, prime minister, and it's like, it's like bromance on the YouTube channel. That money's going, and I suspect that money's funding a lot of these anti-Jewish, anti-Israel right-wing channels are coming. They're Qatari funded. So that's Qatar. They share the largest gas field in the world with Iran. Now they're Sunni, Iran is Shia, but money is money, right? Particularly when it will further Islam. When Hania had his funeral, he was assassinated in Tehran, an Iranian Revolutionary Guard safe house in the midst of Tehran. Israel took him out. Amazing operation. I think from what I've read, the people sleeping in the rooms next door didn't even wake up or get hurt. Hania's funeral was in Qatar. That's where he's buried. I've got the video of it. I watched it. I played it. So this is what's going on. So I have from the canary thing there I've got Israel, United States, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Russia, Syria after the fall, the new Syrian government, and then the Iranian piece there. In fact, I made up a new Iranian piece. Iran had a bunch of proxies. They had the Houthis on the left. They had Hamas. They had Hezbollah. Israel's done a pretty good job on most of those, although something needs to be done with the Houthis. I'm sorry. You cannot launch missiles into the middle of a country. You cannot shoot at ships going by and interrupt world trade. Somebody needs to go, and I don't know what the answer is. Somebody needs to take them out. That's not going to be pretty. Okay. Hamas did that on October 7th. They dug hundreds of miles of tunnels under Gaza. I've been down there. It's not that big. It's not that big a place. 42 miles maybe from north to south, a few miles wide. Hundreds of miles of tunnels and branches. There's a organization, I think it's Honest Reporting, did a 3D analysis of just 90 of the tunnels. It's unbelievable. Like the New York City subway on steroids. They're spending all their money doing this. So Israel has done good with Hamas. They're not done yet. They've done well with Hezbollah up in Lebanon. They're not done yet. They've taken out a lot of their capabilities. And so I have the picture there on the right of the Iranian chess piece, which is broken. Iran is broken. they have massive problems. The only thing they really have left of significance is the nuclear queen. And it was funny because I've used these chess pieces for years, and now we're listening to these analysts, and they're all talking about chess pieces. So they talked about the Iranian queen. So I made up my own Iranian queen. And I don't care. I want people talking about the truth. I'm more concerned about whether I get credit or not, or whether they may not even see me. They just may be people paying attention also. But this nuclear issue is a very big deal. So what happened last week, oh, by the way, if you're a conservative and you like to play around with your friends who aren't, you can show them this week's cover of The Economist magazine, which says only 1,361 days to go. That will drive them a little bit berserk. So in Iran, this happened a week ago. The largest explosion of any kind at any time in the history of Persia or Iran took place a week ago in their port, Bandar Abbas, down on the Persian Gulf. 80% of their container traffic, shipping traffic for the whole country comes through that port. The port is destroyed. There's a picture. It started a lot of secondary fires. And I don't see it. I thought I had put a video in here. So I don't see it. But anyway, this is what's happening on the port there in Voss. And so the point I was going to make is this: you're kind of lucky to live where you live from a geopolitical standpoint. Oh, because nothing happens here, right? No, you can understand the problem just by the terrain. So as we're driving across West Texas, New Mexico, you see mountains. You have mountains around here. So your terrain is very similar to what you would find in the mountainous parts of Iran. And so what they do is they will find a mountain. They'll go to the bottom of the mountain. They'll drill down in, and they'll put underground nuclear missile production facilities, missile storage facilities, and that sort of thing. Now, when you go to attack that, so the Houthis don't have that. We've launched massive attacks, the United States, on the Houthis in Yemen. Yesterday, the Houthis fire a missile and it hits a road right by Ben Gurion Airport. That's a huge, humongous deal. How do you get rid of that problem? It's very difficult to get rid of that problem. How do you bomb something to get all the way down? Now we have bunker busters, but go out to any of the mountains between here and the Cascades in the pass. How do you bomb that to get down all the way to the bottom of that thing? And when it's below grade, at the bottom, it's below grade. It's a very, very difficult problem. And, I would suggest that maybe the only way to handle that is a ground invasion. But what do you think the political climate would say about the United States doing a ground invasion on Yemen or Iran or anything like that? By the way, a ground invasion of Iran will fail. It's a mountain fortress. I mean, this is like, you're protected here because Pam and I were talking about this yesterday. We're driving in. We came through North Cascades National Park, and we drove over, and we're kind of coming up the Omak. What I don't know what the valley's called. Omak. I don't know. It's some valley here that you live in, and we're thinking like, who were the completely insane people that came out here on wagons thinking they're going to get up and down these hills and start a new life? They must have been out of their minds or very committed and so out of their mind. I mean, so we were thinking like so I complained that, my SUV got hit by a vulture on the interstate highway and was driving, over 80 miles an hour in West Texas. That's how tough I am. And but this is a very, very massive problem that we have, is how we're going to deal with these problems. And I think this thing is with us until the end. I don't know. I mean, if you look at, like, here's a graphic from Ayatollah Khomeini put this up on his website a while back. You see the underground missiles and the storage facilities there on the left in that photograph. See all that? And then they have that up. So how do you get all the way down to the bottom there when that's under several thousand feet of rock or more? That's a huge problem. Those weapons don't really exist, or you got to drop a lot of them in the exact same spot and hope you break through and then set off all the missile fuel. So what happened, by the way, the reason for the port attack in Iran last week was when Israel, so after the attacks in October of last year, Iran launched missiles into Israel. Then Israel did an attack. This is 1,000 miles. These jet fighters that they have might have a range unloaded of 1,200 miles. So that means if you fly 1,000 miles there, fly around, drop your bombs and every stuff, you're not getting home. So it was a massive thing with refuelers and over 100 aircraft. Everything went over there, came back. They destroyed air defense systems. Some of the Russian sophisticated S-400s. But the problem is, that was 6 months ago. You can replace things in 6 months. And Trump has said we're going to do something tomorrow, this week, and that's 100 days ago now. Now, I'm concerned about this. I'll be very honest with you. His main negotiator in the Middle East, a guy named Steve Witkoff, I don't think he knows what he's doing. Talks about the wonderful Qataris. We can make peace with Iran. No, you can't. Figure out a way to beat them and get rid of them. By the way, what do you think Jesus is going to do when he comes back? Have you read the book of Revelation? Have you read Isaiah chapter 63? Who is this who comes from Basra, the area of Petra and Jordan, with blood-stained robes of his enemies? The final battle described as the blood flowing as high as a horse's bridle for 175 miles, which, by the way, the valley of Megiddo, Jezreel Valley, to Petra is almost exactly 175 miles. Do the math. So Jesus is described in Isaiah chapter 63. Who is this who comes from Basra, Petra, in the blood-stained robes of his enemies? It's the Moshiach, the Messiah, the Savior of Israel. That describes something that's coming. I don't think our world will do it. Jesus will take care of it. So Emmett, do you just want me to go on for a little bit or what do you want to do?
You know, you want to take a 5-minute break?
5 minute break and I'll do something in 15 minutes and we'll finish up. I know you don't believe me.
Write that down.
About 15 minutes. Okay, so anyway, I hope you can understand that this is just a crazy world where all this stuff is happening. I talk about the grid that I look at for Bible prophecy is I use 4 things: ACLU, the prophetic ACLU, acceleration. All these things that the scripture is happening are going to be happening faster and faster and faster and faster. Do we live in that world? Yes. They're all going to be happening at the same time. Do we see geopolitical conflicts that are from Bible prophecy and the temple and all this stuff? Yes, convergence. Then logistics. Some of these things require like armies and that type of thing. So remind me to talk about some things on the European Antichrist when we come back, because that plays into exactly what we've been talking about. How do we beat these people? Can we do an land invasion? That'll be the question. And then understanding. Daniel says that towards the end of time, if you're in the book, going back and forth through the book, you understand, and the wise will instruct many. Things will get clearer. I use the example of the eye chart at my doctor's office. I'm nearsighted. By the way, I'm blessed to be nearsighted. My wife is farsighted. We've got, no offense, honey, we've got readers all over the house, all over the car. I can't read that. Let me get my readers. But if I don't have my glasses on, I can hold it up and read it. So I'm blessed in that sense. But so when I go to the eye doctor, as you get closer to an object, it's clear for you generally. So my doctor always puts up the eye chart. I get the E right every time. I memorized it. Now that you have noticed right now, they're mixing up the rest of the lines. They change the letters around. So you can't memorize them. But anyway, as you get closer to an eye chart, even for me being nearsighted, everything becomes crystal clear. That's how things are going to be in the end time if we're paying attention to Bible prophecy and what the scriptures say. So we're going to come back in about 5 minutes or so, and I'll do about 15 minutes. No, we'll do 15 minutes. I just have a few things to say about the return of Jesus, and we'll do that. Okay? So you people watch it online. I'll turn the live stream off now. I may put it back up later, but if you really want the detailed teaching, go watch my Palm Sunday talk on the Shekinah returns. But I'll sort of summarize that here for you guys today. So anyway, thanks.
Oh, yeah. Should I stand up and say? Hey, church family, so just take a few minutes.